Social media giants, including Meta and X, are about to be put under fresh scrutiny in Parliament. The federal government argues they're more determined to wipe trusted news sources from their platforms than scammers and other criminals.
A joint parliamentary committee will examine the influence and impact of the popular apps. It comes after Meta abandoned deals with Australian media outlets that saw the social media giant paying for content, as well as the ongoing dispute between Elon Musk and the e-safety commissioner. That returns to court today, in fact. Let's go straight to Monty Bovell in Canberra. Monty, good morning. So what is the committee going to be looking at?
Well, good morning, Michael. The government says that the committee is being set up because these social media companies have a huge amount of control and reach over what Australians see online, but have little or no scrutiny. And essentially, the government says that there is a clear message to these social media giants: do better and be better. Now, this committee will look into a range of areas that includes online harms, the algorithms they use, the impacts on public interest journalism. As you say, it also will be looking into Meta's recent decision to stop funding Australian news through the News Media Bargaining Code, as well as harmful or illegal content on social media, including violent extremist material. Now, in the context of that, we know right now that social media platform X is fighting the e-safety commissioner in the federal court over some takedown orders over videos that were posted on the platform following the stabbing attack in the Sydney church last month. That actually goes back to the federal court today. This committee process is quite a lengthy one. It will now need to, terms of reference for the committee need to be formed, and then also the committee membership needs to be decided on. It will involve politicians from across the political spectrum, across the parliament, and then we'll go into a stage where we might see some public hearings. Now, the social media giants, of course, will be asked to attend those public hearings. Whether or not we can expect people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg to attend sort of remains to be seen. It's very unlikely, but certainly those social media companies, or the idea behind this committee, will be to put some really tough questions to those social media companies.
OK, Monty, thank you.
Advocates are calling for clubs and the AFL to take a proactive action to stamp out homophobia after a Gold Coast Suns player was handed a 5-game suspension for using a slur in last Sunday's game. With us now is Hayley Conway, the CEO of Pride Cup. Very good morning to you, Hayley. Thanks for coming in to talk to us about this.
Thank you.
Look, I want to take the focus off this discussion about penalty and, arguments over should it be stricter or, fewer games, and actually ask you, what's the harm that's done when we hear homophobic slurs like this one?
Thanks for the question. Young LGBTIQ people have a 6 times higher suicide rate than their heterosexual peers, and so most of that comes from this fear of exclusion, from homophobia and transphobia that they experience. And so when we look and hear those statistics, we understand that these kinds of words coming from heroes, people on the field, someone who we look up to, they have a genuine impact on young people, but also even on adults like myself. It's a reminder that we haven't ever been welcome in games like AFL, and what we want to see is some change.
So it stings. You feel it personally.
That's right, absolutely. Yes, yeah, you feel it personally and you understand the history of those words. And I think when we met with Jeremy Finlayson after he had his on-field incident as well, he was really clear that he'd never received educational information about how it felt for LGBTIQ people to hear that, and that it made a real difference for him to understand the impact that his words had.
How disappointing is it for you then, just weeks after Jeremy Finlayson's case, we have Will Powell making another homophobic slur, getting him scrubbed out for 5 weeks?
Of course it's disappointing. Will Powell had this chance to not use a slur like that, and what we're looking for instead is a chance for broader cultural change across the AFL, but also across all sports. This is not unique to AFL, and it is disappointing, but it is also good to see serious action being taken.
What more action would you like the AFL to take on this front?
Yeah, I think internal education for administrators, coach and players is really key at every level of the game. So from the grassroots, where we know that this is where this language really starts to take hold, but to run it all the way up through to the peak of the administration. And that's the kind of thing that we know works, and there's great evidence for those programs at the grassroots up to the elite level, and there's great evidence for it across every sport.
Why is it important to take it all the way up to the top, do you believe, Hayley, that education, instead of kind of triaging and doing mini courses with people who've used slurs? Why would you like to see it throughout the entire organisation? What does that mean when that happens?
Well, I think it shows that the issue we're trying to address is a cultural and systemic one rather than something that is about individual problems. And so Will is acting in an environment that has tolerated that behaviour for a long time. And so that's a really difficult thing for him because he's being sanctioned as an individual, difficult for the club. But what we want to see is widespread change where everyone takes responsibility for creating an environment that's more welcoming.
Pride Cup, it's doing incredible things. What's been the impact of that work?
When we work with a club at a grassroots level, the evaluations we have show that they can reduce homophobia by 40 to 50% after one education session and one rainbow-themed game day. And those are iconic celebrations where people have an incredible time and genuinely feel welcome in their community. And next week we will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of the first ever Pride Cup in Yarra Glen.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's so great. And thanks for all the work you're doing in this space and for coming to talk to us this morning.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, the High Court is expected to issue its judgment today in the case of an Iranian asylum seeker refusing to be deported, which could have significant consequences for the immigration system. The man, known as ASF 17, argues he'd face persecution in Iran on the basis he's bisexual and should be released, based on last year's ruling that detaining people with no reasonable prospect of deportation is unlawful. The Commonwealth argues his ongoing detention is a consequence of his refusal to cooperate. Home Affairs says there are between 150 and 200 others in similar circumstances.
A Senate inquiry into the Australian Antarctic Division has recommended the federal government develop a business case to acquire a second icebreaker vessel. The committee wants a second ship to be used solely for logistics, so the existing ship can be used for expeditions focused on science. The ship has faced repeated challenges since coming into service in 2021 and is yet to conduct a single dedicated marine science voyage.
Bruce Lehrmann's legal team will get the bill today for his failed defamation case against Network 10 and journalist Lisa Wilkinson, which is expected to run into the millions. Mr Lehrmann lodged the defamation case over an interview with Brittany Higgins when she first claimed she'd been raped. The federal court found Mr Lehrmann had been defamed, but 10 won the case with its truth defence after Justice Michael Lee said on the balance of probabilities Mr Lehrmann did rape Ms Higgins. The criminal trial against Mr Lehrmann was abandoned with no findings against him.
The federal government will spend almost $250 million to upgrade the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra ahead of the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. The announcement comes in the wake of a review that explored whether the institute could be moved to southeast Queensland. The federal government says this funding will go towards implementing its recommendations.
The WA government says it will deliver a bumper operating surplus of $3.2 billion this financial year, despite it coming in lower than predicted. Treasurer Rita Saffioti says the budget rises to the challenges created by the record numbers of people coming to live in WA and a higher cost environment. Ms Saffioti says the strong economy allows for investment in infrastructure and a boost to support with the cost of living.